session. How are you?
Good. How are you? Here, I'm gonna put my headphones on. What was your first name again?
My name is MontiLee, MontiLee.
Wow, cool name. I've never heard that before.
Thank you. But I'm calling from filmobsession.com.
Okay.
And I am calling for our little interview here today. So thank you for talking to me.
No problem. Sounds good.
So I am recording this. Is that okay?
Yes. Yes.
I always want to ask that.
No, that's very nice of you to ask. It's like being on the phone with AT&T. They record it they always say it for whatever purposes, and you're like, well, let's be realistic here.
Recording for quality purposes, even though you know it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, we're really recording this to make sure you don't say anything wrong for your lawyers. But for you, I know that's not the case, so I look forward to it.
Fantastic, thanks. So again, thanks for taking the time to fit us into your schedule. I know you've got blockers with South by Southwest going on this weekend, so I know it's kind of crazy out there.
That's all right. We're actually heading down there for there tonight. I love that festival.
I'm looking forward to the day when I can take the time to go out there. I hear it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's one of I premiered a comedy there before about it must have been I don't know, at least 5 years ago, and I was like, holy crap, this is the most fun place to premiere a comedy because the crowd is so into it. Like they're just rowdy and fun, and it's a lot of fun.
Well, that's fantastic. Like I said, I look forward to making it out there one year and then taking part in all that really wild energy. I know I have a lot of creative friends that do a lot of short films and they do music, and they just say it's great when you can go somewhere and the audience and creators they're literally feeding off each other, and it's a positive experience. They can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, that's good. Where are you located?
So I'm outside Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, right on. Whereabouts?
I'm actually in Royal Oak, so I'm north of Detroit.
Okay. I have a bunch of my Italian side of my family's from oh gosh, why am I forgetting the name of it? Lansing? No, where is it called? Shoot, I'll have to look it up.
Lansing?
No, not Lansing. It's a suburb of Detroit. I went there all growing up. Sterling Heights.
Okay. On the other side, but yes. So Sterling Heights they've got a lot of great bakeries out there. So yeah. So if the Italian side of your family is out there, then that's why, 'cause the food out there is fantastic.
Oh, good.
So I know your in particular spans you do movies and you do television. So is the creative process for creating a score the same for across all mediums, or is it different? Do you have different beats for television than you do for movies?
That's a good question. I think there used to be something like that, but those lines have been so blurred now. I've worked on some television that I could not believe, how high the production value was, and they probably spent more on that one episode than they did on the entire film that I worked on, independent film I'd worked on the year before or something. And so I don't think there's any different story beat. Story is story. I'd say the only biggest thing is usually the time crunch. Usually you're, instead of having a precious 3 or 4 months, like Blockers, I think I started on Blockers back in, I want to say October. And, you get a lot more time on a film than you do on a TV show, for sure.
Oh, of course.
But I view them the same. I'm basically helping a director tell a story, conveying emotion as best I can to help people access the emotion of the character through music. Doing it subtly, but we speak this language of music that you hear a sad song on piano and you relate to something sad, and you hear something upbeat and on a country band, and you get a certain aesthetic, a certain feeling with all those different styles of music and different tones. So to me, character is character, and that's who I'm writing for, whether it's film or television.
So what do you look for? What do you look for to become like a central focus in a film? Do you look specifically for character? Do you tailor your music to fit scenes, or is there something an underlying theme throughout?
The funny thing is the answer to your question is all of those. uh, I very much, before I even focus in on characters, I focus in on how does this director want to tell the story? What is this story about? What's the overall tone? What's the sound? What's the instrumentation? What do we want people to feel? Blockers was one where I was like, right after reading the script, I was like, man, it's almost like a heist. Like it's a big chase. They're chasing their kids all over town. And so I was like, oh, I got inspired. I was like, oh, I should write big percussion. And so I start with, big ideas, but what it always ends up happening is honing in on those characters and figuring out, what are those characters saying? What's this story really about? Besides all the fun or all the drama or whatever is in between. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
Okay.
so you're looking for a balance between the two essentially as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of detail that goes into the craft of it, but also a lot of it is just instincts. If you're a human being and you're capable of feeling emotion and empathizing with others and their emotion, then writing a film score comes somewhat naturally because you know what it's like to have your heart broken and you see a character have their heart broken. You can dive right into that place and write music that can help other people go, oh, I know that feeling.
For your own process, do you start first with the script, or do you start with do you start with maybe the dailies, or do you start with like a zero draft of a completed film before you begin, or
it used, when I started in this career, you used to wait until there was locked picture. Now with, in the last 10 years of digital, there is no such thing as locked picture. It kind of keeps unlocking until the very end. The edit can always be fluid and change. And so, it depends. If I'm brought into the film early, I read the script. And a lot of times I'll read it once just to read it. Don't even think about a thing. Just take it in and get into the story. And then I'll start reading it through the lens of, how would I score this and what are these characters about and what's the arc of the story, and I dive a little deeper in. If I'm getting onto a film kind of late where they're like, hey, we need your help, we need to fix this or something, then I'm usually just watching an edit. For one of my I'm not sure if I'm doing this film yet or not, but the director asked if I could do it and then sent me the film and said, this is almost done. We've got like a month left on an editorial. What do you think? So then whenever I see those things too, I try to, take it with a grain of salt, knowing it's not a finished product. But you can get an idea of a filmmaker's sensibility just through even a 2.5 hour cut that'll end up being a 90-minute film.
Okay. So with your physical characters or the physical characters within the screenplay itself and within the movie itself, I know music can be its own character. It can be, like a settled backdrop or I'm a writer myself, so, but music can be almost part of like an ensemble of the cast itself. And sometimes you have a score that's super jarring and it takes you out when all you can think about is this music is distracting from the overall movie itself. So how do you know how much emotion to convey within a scene where where you're adding to it as opposed to look how great my music is?
I'll answer your question, but before that, I'll tell you a quick anecdote where right after I did a pretty big film, somebody put Michael Giacchino and I together for lunch, and I had lunch with him, and he's a great composer, and he does now he works with J.J. Abrams and Spielberg and all those guys and does the Pixar films. And he goes, sometimes you're working with a director and they come to you and they're like, I would like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And you're like, okay, I can make that peanut butter jelly sandwich. But by the way, I can also make this huge pizza with all these toppings. It can come with everything, and I can roast it the exact way you want it. I can put the toppings in one half or the other. I can do all these things. And in the end, that director's just going to go, yeah, thanks. I just want a peanut butter jelly sandwich. And so, one, the rule is never emote all over a film. No one, you're not being hired to showcase your music. You're being hired to I've never looked at it as that way. You're being hired to help them tell a story. I've gotten a lot of my education in film through a director named Jason Reitman, who I've worked with, and he's become a dear friend. And in that camp is never hold someone's hand, always just give them a place to feel. And I think the only time really any of us are asked to hit it on the nose is maybe a Disney film or something. Okay. Something for children where, here's the villain, play dark music, here's the hero. But I mean, the kind of films I do, I would never touch that. I basically am trying to give people a space to feel what they want to feel. And then, it depends on my director too. The directors will sometimes say, I had a director recently where I said, look, I don't want to dumb down your film. This is the funniest conversation, but I was like, I don't want to be too on the nose. And he goes, no, be on the nose. He goes, I'm not trying to win any awards. I just want people to go. And it's a big director and it's going to be a good sized movie coming out later this year. And he goes, yeah, I'm not trying to win any awards. I just want people to get popcorn, go there with their boyfriend or girlfriend or husband or wife or family and just have a great time. And I was like, okay, I get it. And that's his sensibility. So it always is different.
So how do you know, and I know these are a lot of personal process questions, but
it's okay.
I'm, like I said, I do a little writing on my own and music always, because it's a big part of, you can tell when there is an absence of music in a film, when the silence itself is overwhelming in a character. So how do you know when to let the music bridge the scenes and become almost nonverbal dialogue to say what folks are thinking, but is not being verbally conveyed on screen?
Well, we were talking about subtext, and music's often used for subtext. In fact, I just was writing for a scene for there's a brand new show called Swipe Right I'm doing for Google. They're coming out with their channel, and it's an original. And I've known the director for years, or the producer, and I was doing a scene, and she goes, look, we captured some of it visually. She goes, but music's going to convey exactly how this character feels, even though nothing's spoken for a good 20, 30 seconds. And I said, great. I go, what do you want? Here's what I think they feel, but I really want to know what you intended for them to feel. and that's where the beautiful art of collaboration in filmmaking comes from. It's, my first swipe at it, I just was like, I didn't want to telegraph anything because I don't want to telegraph my emotions onto a character ever. So I played it wide open, and then she's like, oh no, I want you to be more specific. I'm like, okay, well then what specifically do you want? She told me exactly what, and I was like, great. And then, now we're off on the news scene. So, these things, when people listen to a final score on a film, which I hope they aren't paying attention to be honest. I hope they're just feeling it, not hearing it. But I'd say for every film, the amount of music minutes in a film, I've probably written 3 films worth of music for each one at minimum, sometimes 4 or 5.
Fair.
Same thing you do in writing. You just rewrite and rewrite.
and you hope you get to a point where someone tells you to stop.
Yeah. Usually it's the people telling you to rewrite. I'm always willing to stop.
So you're working with Kay Cannon on blockers this time around. How was it meshing your creative viewpoints? Did you always see, were you able to create a score and go, oh, look at this thing I made, and she said this was fantastic? Or what's the collaborative process when you're working with a director or a producer? I'm guessing that you may not always see eye to eye. So specifically with Kay Cannon, how did that process play out?
That's a really good question. I'd say the vast majority of filmmakers I work with, we will always respect one another and always collaborate with one another to find that space. It's almost impossible you'll never turn in something and that person's going to go, it's perfect. It's more of, you start, and like with Kay, she's like, okay, here's the film. This is what I'm looking for. Here we talked about style. We talked about tone. I mean, comedy, it's all about tone. How are we going to convey this style of comedy? And then I went back and started writing, and I wrote probably for about 2 to 3 of the acts, multiple ideas, and said, this is how I'm thinking of tackling it. Here's what I think for the main motif. Here's a couple other sub-motif ideas and things like that. And she was like, okay, I like this and I like this, but not any of the other stuff, and that's kind of how it works. You go in and you might get a 20% average, you might get 40, you just never know. But what I loved about working with Kay, she's just 2 things. She's so funny and she's so smart. As far as a writer, I mean, the characters feel so authentic, even though think about it, they're in the most ridiculous situation. They really are. Yet they feel, and one of them was a professional wrestler, as an actor, and yet you just believe these characters immediately. You don't think of them as anything else. And that's a testament to those actors, but also a testament to her and her style of directing and editing, Stacy, the editor, as well. And so basically it was writing, and for the most part it would take a few tries and get it. There was a couple scenes that just dogged us, they were just so tough. It took, I think one of them, I wrote 14 ideas. Oh, wow. by the time we got to the one. And that was just like, we're both good communicators, so we were able to communicate most of the way through. There was just one that was incredibly nuanced, and she was really looking for something specific, and but didn't know how to articulate it at the very beginning. So it's just a collaboration. But I will say, another thing I loved about writing for Kay is she's a great director in that I trusted her instincts. I was like, oh man, she would say like, hey, you played this one scene this way. This is what I'm really thinking. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think of it that way. And I'd like to think I'm on top of those things. I've been doing this for like 15, 20 years, and have her, talk about, especially when she was doing some reshoots, and we'd be in editorial, and she would just go, oh, I'm going to tell you what this is. And it wasn't anything that we needed to know. It was just more of she was just kind of pitching us before she probably went and pitched the executives at Universal to let them know what she was going to do. Yeah. But I was like, holy crap, that's so smart, like the way she approached it. And also what I saw is that she wasn't afraid to, as they say in editorial, cut the babies, basically she shot this one sequence that I thought was hysterical and it was great. But in the end, she goes, it just wasn't adding to the story. It was adding to the punchlines of things, and it made people laugh, but it wasn't serving the story in the end. And I was like, oh, okay. Wow. So a lot of respect.
For your own personal writing process, we see a lot of this in movies, as it were. You have your songwriters and your composers. Are you in front of a keyboard? Are you in front of one of those multiple screens with this you feel set up to cost more than most people have, most people's houses, and it, it's pen and paper. Is it, a guitar? How do you write music? I'm a writer of words, so music is like math. It's kind of beyond me. I can appreciate the heck out of it, but I don't understand the process.
Yeah, I basically, I have a couple studios, and I also have a writing room that I use down on the Warner Brothers lot. And basically, I'll sit down. It depends. Like I'm usually sitting at a keyboard and in front of a few screens. At one of my studios, I project the film onto a big giant white wall, and then it reflects in a window because it's in a high rise. And so I get this like 15-foot wide big screen on a window in front of me with the city behind it, which is kind of inspired. It's very inspiring and fun. And other times I'll be just like in a small little writing space. Sometimes I write on airplanes because I have a remote studio with me. Like I'm just constantly writing. Yeah, I have a little keyboard that fits into my backpack that I carry around with me, and I can write anywhere, and so I do. And then for blockers in particular, like there are a few days where I just contacted some of the best drummers I know.
Sure.
One was a professional drummer. He's a professional drummer who has traveled the world as an ethnomusicologist, but he's also traveled the world as a rock star drummer for years. And I just said, hey, bring everything. Bring your drum kit, bring your surdo, bring your whole bag of percussion.
Wow.
I'm going to bring all my percussion. And we go meet in a fancy studio, and we spend 10 hours one day and about 7 another day, and about another 7 or 8 another day, and just played all sorts of different things. Like I would come up with ideas, and then I'd play picture while we were working on it as well. And so I have the ideas I came with from my writing room in my studio, and then we would go into and then we'd also improvise off of. I would go, oh, I like this. Let's build off of that now, and then I go into an editorial process back in my studio with my assistant, and we go through and start combing through everything, and I'm like, this bit right here is perfect. I'm going to marry it to this part, and this is what I'm going to do, and you get this humanity in it, and you get this kind of spontaneity, and that actually comes through in the music, like that, the joy of that and the spirit of it, whether somebody notices or not in an audience. Like audibly, they probably won't because it's underneath so much dialogue and effects, but they will always feel it. It's the same thing of saying like, like the film I did right after Blockers. I recorded a live orchestra, and you put a synth compared to a live orchestra, like it's all the humanity of all those players. Somebody just fell in love. Somebody's addicted to drugs. Somebody just found out they're going under financially. Somebody's found out they're going to retire. Whatever it is, all these different things people are going through, that comes through in the music because you just can't help it. And that's always felt. Human beings will always feel other human beings. So that's what ever since I began in my career, I was never one to use a lot of the synths and things that, are at our disposal. I've always hired in real musicians because I want to capture that energy and humanity.
That's fantastic. Okay, last question, and then I'll let you go.
All right.
What is your favorite genre of movies to write music for?
Comedies with heart.
Comedies with heart.
It doesn't always have to be a comedy, but I seem to have really, if I look at my work and my career, I've done some thrillers, I've definitely done dramas, but the vast majority of what I do is comedies. And a lot of times especially since Juno, I just look for films with heart because part of it maybe is I just love seeing people being inspired in life versus watching a killer go off and off a bunch of kids in a, horror film. But I really seek out interesting films, and I probably shouldn't limit it to comedies. It just ends up being a lot of what I do. But I also love when you can dig into a character. Like, there's a film I'm just demoing on right now, and I've read the script like 4 times, and I mean, the actor that's playing this lead character is an Oscar-winning actor, so I'm like, I already know it's going to be played so well, and I just look at this character, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's fascinating, and there's so many different ways to go about this, and I just love the escapism and joy of cinema. I love that you can, we used to do this by sitting around a campfire and telling stories and passing along stories from generation to generation. Now we use this medium of film and of television to tell these same types of stories. They're just more visual now, obviously, and it's really like I find so much joy in it, and it doesn't mean it's not a ton of work at times and really challenging at times, but I feel beyond blessed and lucky to do what I do for a living, to help tell these stories. And so I try to choose wisely which ones I'm involved with, because there's a point in your career where you get fortunate enough to be asked to be on some different things, and sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks amazing, but I'm not the right fit for that. And you have to say no, and you find the ones that you can really be additive to, and really jump in and work with that team on. And yeah. So if I was to pick a genre, I mean, I'd say comedy, but reality is I just look for characters with heart, characters that we can really get behind.
Well, that's amazing. You're amazing. Thank you so much for taking this time out to talk with me.
No problem. I look forward to reading what you write.
We're on Film Obsession, filmobsession.com. Congratulations on being South by Southwest. That's not everybody can do that. Not everybody can say that. So, congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate every bit of what I get to do in my career. Trust me. I spent enough years not doing what I wanted to do on my way to doing it. So
I completely understand. And we look forward to screening your movie this year. Again, congratulations, and thank you so much for your time.
No problem. You have a great day.
Hey, you too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.